And tonight on the Daily Wrap, the Club for Growth is going after GOP frontrunner Donald Trump. We'll speak to the club president to find out why they think Trump isn't the right man for president. And there's more bad news, if that's possible, for Hillary Clinton, as the heart and soul of her base, white women, are taking their votes elsewhere. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host Rick Unger.
Good evening.
Is Donald Trump a Republican?
You're asking me?
Well,
I'm not the Republican on this panel. I think the Club for Growth, who we're going to be speaking with the president in great detail. No, I don't think he's a Republican. If you look at his record, he's much more of a Democrat than a Republican. But I think what he has going for him is that nobody cares if he's a Republican or a Democrat.
Isn't that fascinating?
That's what they like about him.
So all we heard about all this time was that conservatives want a true conservative to be the nominee, that Romney was too moderate and McCain was too moderate, and then they get a moderate and they say, he's just the guy for us.
Except, I don't know if you call him a moderate. He's almost an extremist on different points on different sides.
Interesting. Much like you, actually.
Much like me.
Yes.
Anyway. I have so much in common with him.
To the pragmatic Mr. Unger's right. She is America's pundit, and affiliate attorney Heather Hansen is back once again. Good to be back indeed. And finally, he's a former FBI special agent, a former Navy SEAL, and currently the president of Continued Services. I keep waiting for a joke. It's not happening. Jonathan Gilliam joins us as well. You never wear a tie, Gilliam. Why is that?
No jokes, no.
You wore a tie once.
No, I wore a tie once when I helped host the show, and I almost choked myself out, so I just tend not to wear
like that idea.
It did not look natural, I agree. Okay, let's get right to the Daily Download. And Donald Trump, although still a powerhouse, is beginning to feel some heat. First, a new national poll from CBS News and the New York Times shows Dr. Ben Carson is hot on Trump's heels, getting 23% of Republican voters, while Trump holds steady at 27%. For those doing the math at home, Carson has jumped 17 points in just 2 months. Meanwhile, Trump is feeling heat from some conservative groups, including Club for Growth, that just released this ad.
Which presidential candidate supports higher taxes, national health care, and the Wall Street bailout? It's Donald Trump.
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
Trump wants us to think he's Mr. Tell It Like It Is, but he has a record, and it's very liberal. He's really just playing us for chumps. Trump, just another politician.
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
Club for Growth Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So are Donald Trump's days in the spotlight numbered? We're now joined by Club for Growth president. His name is David McIntosh, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. The Club for Growth is a national network of over 100,000 pro-growth, limited government Americans who share in the belief that prosperity and opportunity come from economic freedom. They have a great track record of holding both Republican and Democratic lawmakers accountable for their votes on fiscal issues. David, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
So why don't you think Donald Trump is fit to run the country, particularly from a fiscal perspective?
Well, we have done in-depth research into his record of statements, his positions in the past on issues, and he's not a fiscal conservative. He's probably the worst candidate of the whole field, with the exception of Bernie Sanders, on economics. He's for tax increases. He's for single-payer government-run health care. He's for using eminent domain to take private property and turn it over to developers. And he would start a huge trade war with China and Mexico that would sink a lot of our economic growth.
I got to tell you, Newsmax has gotten thousands of emails in support of Trump. He's leading in the polls, even though Ben Carson is closing. What is America missing about Donald Trump, or why do you think he's resonating so much if, as you point out, and it's clear, it's in his own words, he truly isn't a conservative, at least from a fiscal perspective?
I think he's captured the frustration that Americans have with Washington and the leaders here failing to keep their promises and just getting nothing done. The problem is what Trump would do would move in the exact wrong direction and would be a disaster for the economy. In part, I think he's really just like the politicians he's complaining about, because he's saying whatever the voters want to hear to get their support and saying it in a great, entertaining way. But then if he were ever elected, he would be terrible on anything they really care about for free markets, lower taxes, individual property rights. And that's what we're trying to point out, that he really is kind of treating the voters like they're chumps, that he can say anything and it really doesn't matter. And
Rick,
so we're...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. We're gonna use his own words and point out that what he says does matter, and would be terrible for the country.
Rick Unger here. As you know, there's a letter that's circulating which purportedly has your name on it, where you are asking for a donation of about $1 million from Mr. Trump. He says he declined it. What I'm curious about first is, did you get an indication in your meeting with him initially, preceding that letter, that he was going to make $1 million donation to Club for Growth?
Yeah, and this meeting took place before he became a candidate. Yes. He asked me to come up and visit with him. I told him, you know, we don't agree with you on taxes and trade. And he said, that's okay, you're doing some good things. Can I support you? I'd like to give you some money. I said, yeah, we will take your money, but we'll use it for free trade and low tax candidates and to support those positions. And so we left there. He said, well, send me a letter. I'll send you something. And we did. I now think maybe he was looking ahead. He thinks of politicians as people that he can buy, and perhaps was thinking he could buy the Club for Growth. We're not going to do that. We're going to just tell the truth about his record and let it speak for itself.
Well, now he's out there suggesting that because he didn't give you a donation, you're basically extorting him for not doing so. What's your response to that?
Yeah, he's been saying that for a while. My response is tell people what you do on taxes, on trade, on using eminent domain to take people's property away, and let's focus on the issues.
David, Trump has compared himself to Ronald Reagan. In the ad you show the footage of Trump acting like a Democrat, but to Trump's defense, Reagan also changed his political leanings over time. In this case, do you think that you could ever support a Donald Trump? And if not Trump, who do you see as the candidate that's closest to Club to Growth in terms of perspective on fiscal matters?
You know, I'm glad you raised that, because Reagan's an example of somebody who had true conservative principles, and the Democratic Party changed underneath him. And he shared that later. He didn't leave the party left him. In this case, Donald has said, I'm really more comfortable with the Democrats, and a lot of his ideas are liberal, big government ideas. He changed to try to get the votes to win in the Republican primary. And that's a huge difference. You know, I was lucky, younger in life. I served with President Reagan in the White House. I knew him, and Donald Trump is no Ronald Reagan.
So let me ask you this. Has Club for Growth taken a point of view on Dr. Ben Carson, who we suddenly see is moving up very close to Trump in the polls?
We've been watching that. We are reading his books and researching his positions. We'll have a white paper out on him shortly. I want to let that speak for the views of the club on Dr. Carson. One of the things that's nice to see is that there are other choices, and one of the reasons we think it's important to point out that Donald Trump is not a conservative is so that other conservatives, and we've had white papers on Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and Rand Paul and Governor Walker, and said all of them would be very good for pro-growth economic policy.
David, we only have about 30 seconds, but I'm curious about your opinion on John Kasich. He's the only living person on the planet who has balanced a federal budget. I would imagine that's somebody you're keeping a close eye on as well.
We have, and we actually have released a white paper on Governor Kasich. He has a very mixed record. He did balance the budget when he was in Congress, but then as governor, he grew the whole budget in Ohio. Did it mainly by buying into Obamacare and taking the money that President Obama was offering for that. And so at the end of his terms, Ohio's government is a lot bigger and spending a lot more taxpayer money. And we think that's a problem.
That seems to be a deal breaker for some conservatives as far as expanding government, as far as Obamacare is concerned in Ohio. Interesting to see how that comes to play. So, David, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. And if you want to check out the Club for Growth, go to clubforgrowth.com. Thanks again, David.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Well, meanwhile, Newsmax TV is hosting a post-debate special featuring Ed Berliner, J.D. Hayward, Steve Malzberg. Rick and I will be there as well tomorrow night starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Time right here on Newsmax TV. We'll also have special guests including Ben Carson and Mike Reagan with expert analysis from Dick Morris and John Zogby. And you could have your voice heard too. Go to newsmax.com/judge and register for our instant poll where you get to choose the winner of tomorrow's debate. Coming up, more problems for Hillary Clinton. Stay tuned.
George Will is a disaster. The guy's a disaster. Honestly, another one, Karl Rove. No, he's terrible. It's terrible. He's terrible. He still thinks that Mitt Romney won. He's still going around saying, I think he won. I think the guy is a total incompetent jerk.
Bad night for Fox, apparently. And Rove is from Texas, by the way, and that's where that rally was being held. And, of course, that was Donald Trump making even more mainstream Republican friends. Let's continue our conversation on Donald Trump and Ben Carson. The Club for Growth going after the GOP frontrunner is no small thing, especially with Ben Carson rising in the polls. Heather Hansen, let me quote the New York Times, just had an article come out about Club for Growth and Donald Trump. It says the announcement marks the first serious and sustained attempt to defang Mr. Trump by any moneyed force in the Republican Party. It is a test Mr. Trump, for all his apparent strength, has yet to face. So we always talk about what's going to derail Donald Trump. Is this the type of thing that will, from the conservative, the right of Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think so, but then again, I thought he would be derailed long ago. I thought he was going to be derailed when he commented poorly about veterans. So I think that, you just don't know. Right, yeah, McCain. I think that it is getting there. I mean, the fact that we see Ben Carson rising in the polls is no mistake. I think that he is bringing a similar message that's far more positive, and I think the combination of Donald Trump just hating on everyone's a disaster and everyone's stupid, and if you can see a positive message and at the same time see some negative things about Donald Trump, that may change some minds.
So is this a rare moment in politics where usually you go negative and that's when your numbers go up? Right. Ben Carson goes positive and he's up 20 points in a month.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the reason Ben Carson is up, but clearly he has gone up. Look, those of us who have interviewed Ben Carson know he is a nice man, and that's coming through. He is, in essence, becoming the anti-Trump. Now, the bad news for Ben Carson is that with his growing poll numbers, what he says is going to start to get a lot more attention.
Magnified.
And he says some really strange things. So, I mean, he'll do fine on saying that Obamacare was the worst thing since slavery, and he'll get away with that. But there's some things he's been saying out there that are just kind of over the top. So when we get to the substance part of this campaign, if we ever get to a substance part in this campaign, I think that's when Ben Carson starts to feel the heat.
There's still over 400 days till the election, so we do have time.
Well, we have time, and I'm hoping we'll start to get a taste of it tomorrow night in the debates.
I was just going to say that. I think that we will. I think that those two are going to be really close to one another, able to touch, and we'll see what happens.
So I wonder if we get to the substance part, and Trump is exposed not to be a conservative, and Ben Carson is a nice guy who's a genius in terms of
his medical career.
Mm-hmm. Then I wonder who then rises to the top. Who else could there be that's somebody that could be appealing and pragmatic?
Pick Carly Fiorina,
and
right?
Jonathan, yeah, that's the question for you. If anybody, do you like anybody in this race for that?
I mean, I think John Kasich is
the governor of Ohio,
right? Is possible right there. But I think here's something that we need to point out. When we look at these two individuals, we look at what Ben Carson's doing and what Donald Trump is doing. They're both doing things that are not normal, right? Being nice and not going after the attack, not normal, makes him go up. Even though Trump is going negative, he's not going negative like other people have, where they say things about their record. He just looks at somebody and says, "That guy's an idiot," or "That guy looks weird."
Or not exactly being nice, though.
Not being.
And doesn't it leave the feeling, don't you think, that he doesn't know what that guy's record is? Right. So that's why he makes it all so personal.
But here's why I think it doesn't bother him, because before people were saying things like, I would say, "You look strange," and then smile and say, "But you're a nice guy." He doesn't say that. He says straight out, just the way a normal person would say, "I don't like you," period. And I think that really helps. And let me just say this one more thing I take from you, Rick, is that this group, the Club for Growth, I'm really wondering, are they more concerned with a disaster? I think you said a disaster for conservatism, or is it for Republicans? Because I hear him defending people that are not necessarily conservative. They're more concerned with being Republican. And it instantly gives me a negative view of the Club for Growth when they're defending conservatism.
Although actually, I mean, I'm hardly the one to speak up for the Club for Growth. However, they do have a record of actually going after people on both sides of the aisle when it comes to misspending money in government.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
it's all about money for them. I mean, that's the issue.
Here's what I want to know, and I wish I asked the question, and it happens when you interview somebody, why didn't I ask that question? If they disagree with Donald Trump so much, then why are they asking him for money? Doesn't that seem kind of a contradiction?
Absolutely. And the idea, well, but...
You take money where you can get it?
Yeah, you don't have to agree with somebody. They didn't know he was going to run.
Right, but when they said that they didn't know he was going to run and yet they didn't like his ideas on trade and on taxes, he has not really come out with any ideas as of today, much less as of the time that they say that they didn't like
Very
him.
fair. I mean, what Heather's pointing out, and she's right, is he said in that interview that they weren't comfortable with Trump's positions. Really? Could you tell us what Trump's positions are that you're not comfortable with?
Know whether I'm
they were
comfortable.
very comfortable taking the $1 million had he chosen to give it to them. Believe me, they would be talking a little bit differently.
And here's the thing, Rick, it's an unfair fight, right? Because they say, we're going to spend $1 million on advertising against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump probably eclipses that by a 20 or 30 times margin.
But he hasn't
based
spent
on no, he's not spending it. He's getting it all in free media.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. He'll get it with 22, 23 million people tomorrow night at that debate,
Yes.
and then he'll be interviewed for the next 2 weeks, just like he was again.
The party will be over one of these days, and when it's over, doesn't mean that Donald Trump will be over. It means the free media ride will be over, and he's going to have to open up his wallet.
I don't think it ever ends.
Also, what you just said about this Club for Growth, about the money thing, is that I'm starting to see now that a lot of these Republican hardliners don't like Trump because he's not investing in the Republican machine.
That could be right.
He's not putting the money in there. He's getting it all for free right now, and he's using his own money.
Right.
That's right, and barely any of it for that matter.
That's
right.
yeah.
So anyway, what do you think about the Club for Growth going after Donald Trump? Well, if you go to newsmaxtv.com/comments right below me, yes, it is, and let us know. Also, we may read some on the air later in the show. We've done it before. We'll do it again. Up next, are women ditching Hillary Clinton? We've got all that next.
And I know you know that the campaign recently has hit a bit of a rough patch. She's down in some of the polls. And there was a recent poll that was really striking because it asked voters, what is a word you associate with Hillary Clinton? And, you know, they weren't complimentary words that were at the top of the list. Dishonest, untrustworthy, liar. Why do you think that is? What's not getting through in your mind?
Well, Savannah, I'm not a pundit. I'm a daughter. And as I just said, I love and admire my mom. I know that she's talking about issues that are important to families across our country.
Well, welcome back to the Daily Wrap. That was Chelsea Clinton trying to avoid answering a question about an issue that has long dogged her mother, Hillary Clinton, in her many campaigns. Now, the heart and soul of her base appears to be bailing out.
Hillary Clinton is reaching out to that group that she'd always counted on, white women voters, who are now abandoning her in droves during the last 2 months.
Make these hard choices, and I really hope you will join our campaign in Iowa.
Crisscrossing Iowa Monday, Hillary Clinton trying to shore up her support among women.
Message to every survivor of sexual assault: don't let anyone silence your voice. I want to defend a woman's right to choose and fight against defunding Planned Parenthood.
Now, Mitchell's assessment is backed up by a Washington Post ABC News poll out this week that must have the Clinton forces in some serious disarray. In July of this year, 71% of Democratic-leaning female voters said they had expected to vote for Mrs. Clinton. Now, just 2 months later, that number is down to 42%, a drop of 29 percentage points in just 8 weeks. To suggest that this is a remarkable drop-off in support would clearly be an understatement. Joe, what is sending these Democratic women running to the sidelines?
Those numbers are staggering. Those
truly
numbers
are
are stunning. It's a combination of a couple of things. For one, they don't believe anything that she says, so it's just a general feeling that liar, untrustworthy, all those things in that Quinnipiac poll, unprompted words that first come to mind with Hillary Clinton, but also the Joe Biden candidacy being a possibility. Joe Biden does very well among women. He talks about domestic violence issues often. That's basically his pet cause. So I think the Biden prospect, combined with the fact that Hillary Clinton is probably running one of the worst campaigns we've ever seen of any major candidate, and she really has to start considering getting rid of some people who are advising her at this point. That's what we're seeing. But to see a 30-point drop record, we don't see anything like that in modern politics.
Heather, I'm curious what you think about this to combat this problem. And it's become a serious problem. What does the Clinton campaign do? They start taking to the airwaves and to Twitter and to this and that with pictures of Hillary Clinton throughout her life when she was younger. Right. I'm not quite sure how that helps when one of the issues people consider is her age.
Right. And I also don't think, I mean, I think it's catering to something that they think that white women Democrats want, and it's just not true. Talk to the issues that they want. That she's not doing that. You know, Bernie Sanders is actually doing a better job. If you read the Washington Post article about the two of them, many people are going to Bernie Sanders and Biden, and even Republicans, because they're speaking to the issues. Listen, women are smart and they want to take care of their families and they want to make sure they have jobs and they have food on the table. Those are the issues that she should be addressing, not some esoteric issues and talking about Planned Parenthood. That is not what Americans are worried about today. And if she wants to get these women back, she's got to go for what's important to them.
Well, Jonathan Gilliam, I know what a big fan you are of Hillary Clinton's. Therefore, these numbers must be really upsetting you.
Heartbreaking.
What do you think? I mean, where are these women going to go?
Well, let me tell you a couple things. One, I rarely use the word Quinnipiac, so I don't read their polls. But I will tell you, the Holiday Inn Express commercials, that's just a commercial. It's not reality. So I know that these women, these 30%, didn't just stay at Holiday Inn last night. They are actually realizing that Hillary Clinton is doing, I think, one of two things that's turning them completely off. One, they're realizing that she's a criminal and that she has at least performed criminal behavior.
Be careful about that. Criminal.
Well, listen,
I jumped on somebody last night for that. There's absolutely no allegation, no proof,
no allegation. There's definitely allegations.
Really, by somebody, a prosecutor,
when they say that there's classified emails on her,
no, that is not accusing her of criminal behavior. As a matter of fact, last week the Justice Department cleared her virtually of criminal behavior. I have no.
I don't care what the Justice Department says. I know guys who've been fired. I know guys who've been fired and put in jail for what she's done. The prosecuting and the FBI and the DOJ are doing this because they're appeasing executives.
But when you start calling people criminals, last night we had someone that called her a thief.
She's a criminal, and the other thing that she's done is she's creating issues that don't exist.
Let me move on. What may now be forgotten is that women who have defected from Clinton camp also, in 2008, they left that time and joined up with the Obama effort. Do any of you get the feeling that while women want to see a female president, they would actually prefer it be somebody other than Hillary, Joe?
I think they should really look hard at Heather Hansen's girl, Carly Fiorina, who was run. I said
Heather,
Hillary.
You have something you want to announce here on the show?
Carly may, not I. I don't think I'll be taking Hillary's place this election anyway.
I said that Hillary is running the worst campaign. Carly Fiorina is running the best campaign.
Jonathan, who should they go focused. Who should they go to?
Out of the two, definitely Carly Fiorina. Carly, well, let me tell you one thing Carly does right. And what I was saying a second ago, she doesn't create issues that don't exist just so she can get people to come to her. She doesn't say that women are victims. She says women should be empowered.
All right. What do you make of the news that female voters are leaving Hillary Clinton? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and share your thoughts. Coming up, is gold a stable investment? I'm going to talk to the CEO of Lear Capital to find out. Stay tuned. You're going to want to see this. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap, where I'm joined now by Scott Carter, the CEO of Lear Capital. Scott is absolutely a leading voice on precious metals. He's also a leading advocate for acquiring gold and silver as a hedge against collapsing currencies. Now, I hardly know where to start, Scott. This is a fascinating time for what you do for a living. I've been watching the gold market, and I'm seeing hesitancy basically over the past month. Yeah, it's almost like they're waiting to see what the Federal Reserve is going to do, and nobody knows where to go until then. Are you finding this to be the case?
That is the case, although in July, Rick, something changed, and fear and risk entered the market, and actually our business picked up quite a bit. So I think there's a sense that the Fed is stuck and that the economy is really out in front of its skis, as they say. Right. So therefore, individuals are starting to buy a little bit of gold and silver to diversify their portfolio.
Isn't this the way it typically goes when people get worried about the stock market, when people get worried about the value of the dollar, they tend to escape into precious metals in order for a safe harbor? Is that true?
That's true. Bonds, cash, precious metals, those are safe harbor investments. And look, we've had a great run in the stock market for the last 7 years, but we're at 16,000 and it used to be at 7,500. Isn't it time to diversify your portfolio a little bit? Most investors don't do it. They try to top tick the market, they miss it, and they take a huge hit when the market corrects.
And you know, I would think that a conservative investor, and hopefully most people are long-term conservative investors, I know in the Younger household that's how we do it, that they are diversified and that they are holding hedges against, look, as you point out, this is a difficult time for the stock market. We've seen it over the past couple weeks, just bouncing everywhere, and we really don't know where this is all going. If you have gold in your portfolio, you're probably, and you tell me, you're the expert, you're probably in much better shape to weather a crash if that should be what comes around?
Well, that's exactly the case. Over the last 15 years, if you had just 20% gold and silver in your portfolio overall would be 30% higher than if you didn't own it. Yeah. So it's been a great diversification, but very few people own it. Less than 2% of portfolios own gold and silver.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's a not often discussed asset. People are in love with the stock market. They think they're diversified if they buy Apple and diversify into Google. That's really not diversification.
Right.
So individuals usually own their home and they own stocks. If they really considered the whole play on economics, they would have some gold and silver in their portfolio.
Is there a way for the consumer who's listening to you right now and says, you know, that actually makes some sense? Is there a way for them to buy gold and silver as an asset without having to actually buy the bars of gold and silver?
Yes, you can. If you want exposure to gold and silver, you can buy the GLD, which is a security. But you're not really getting physical gold and silver.
So you prefer something I can actually touch with my hand?
Well, some investors do. If some people, it's like buying a REIT versus buying the real property. Some people just like the exposure to real estate. Other people want to own the building on the corner.
Right.
Gold's the same way.
Thing.
It's the same thing. So our investors, our clients, they want the actual gold and they want to put it in their safety deposit box, or they want to put it in their safe at home.
What do you recommend, again, to the conservative investor? And I think that's really what most of our audience, it's the way they do it.
Right.
What percentage of their portfolio is wise to have in a precious metal?
One, you should look at a long-term investment, and you should have between 5, if you just want a little bit, 5%, up to a maximum of 15%. I mean, it's not a bet the ranch strategy.
Right.
This is a contra asset. You should have stocks, you should have some cash, you should have real estate, you should have bonds, but you should also have some precious metals. There is no better asset that protects you against a declining dollar, declining world currencies.
Right.
Gold and silver has done that. It's been there for 5,000 years.
All right, so let's look at this the other way. Let's say the dollar right now seems to be incredibly solid. It's just, you know, the way the world's shaking out, I'm not sure that's a big negative. But what happens if the stock market doesn't fall apart and you've made the investment in gold? It doesn't lose as much value, does it? In other words, when the stock market goes, it goes.
Right.
Gold tends not to do that, am I right?
That's correct. I mean, gold has had a pretty bad last 3 years. It's down 30%. But if you think about that in comparison to the stock market, you could lose 50, 60% of the value in the stock market.
In a couple of days.
In a couple of days, yeah. Exactly. So gold is just not a well understood investment. And if it were well understood, individuals, investors, they would see the value of it. But by the way, if the stock market goes up, you know, gold has done well in inflationary times. When your dollar is declining.
Well, that's the other part. I mean, here we're waiting to hear what the Fed has to say. A lot of people are betting that they are going to raise interest rates, and that now starts to bring inflation into the mix. You do better with gold and silver during inflationary times, correct?
That's correct. When the dollar is declining in value, you're going to see gold and silver go up. I don't think the Fed, if they raise rates, it'll be 25 basis points. I don't think they're going to do it.
Scott, they're kicking me off for the segments. I so appreciate talking to you. I always learn something when you're hanging out here. So I hope you'll come back soon.
I will. Thanks, Rick.
Scott Carter. I made him Scott Lear. His company is Lear Capital. Again, Scott Carter, CEO of Lear Capital. Thanks so much for coming on. As I said, you're always welcome. To learn more about precious metals and Lear Capital, you want to be sure to go to learcapital.com. And we want to ask you, do you think gold is going to be a stable investment moving forward? Let us know by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Coming up next, we're going to read some of your viewer comments, and you know that's always interesting. Make sure you don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Read some of your viewer comments. Ricky, okay, very good. First, we have some comments on Carly Fiorina. Audrey says, and we quote, Trump's comment about Carly Fiorina didn't generate a lot of female response because as a female, I thought to myself, she is not aging well. Wow, it's like The View, but different. My second thought was if she is running for president, you would think, that she would have some cosmetic work done to be more appealing to the public.
I am so not touching that. Anybody want to weigh in on that? No.
Don't blame you. And you get the Botox every couple of weeks.
So. Yeah, right. I can tell my mouth won't work. Mike says a Ben Carson Carly Fiorina ticket would go to the White House. All Republicans would support them, most blacks would support Carson, and a major proportion of women would support Fiorina. You keep wishing, Mike.
Wow, it's good to see people are voting with their consciences,
Yeah.
right? They're going by color, gender. Anyway, Jack says, where was Rick Unger when his party was attacking Palin and even her teenage daughter with remarks like lipstick on a pig, question mark? Now he's upset because Trump mentions Carly's face.
Now wait a second. Wasn't it Sarah Palin herself who came up with the lipstick on a pig
That's
line?
correct.
Yes.
Yeah, so what are you giving me crap about that? It was Sarah Palin who said lipstick on a pig. Now, I'll tell you where I do agree with you. I didn't like it when David Letterman went after her daughter. Her daughter wasn't running. All families should be off limits. And I still don't think Donald Trump should be picking on somebody's face. Do you?
True. We got a comment from Randy, by the way, and he's from the USA, according to this. His zip code is, now we won't give that. I've supported Club for Growth, but I don't like any group telling me how to vote, whether it's unions or anyone else. I'll make up my own mind, says Randy.
Good for you.
You're up.
Regarding tomorrow night's debate, John says Rick Perry is now out of the race, so he will no longer be in the kids' table debate, leaving 4 debaters, possibly 3. Good point. They will each get lots of time to carry their message out. Carly might have done better to stay in the smaller debate. The big debate is going to be too busy to get their messages out effectively due to lack of questions and time. You know what? You make a great point. I think this entire system is ridiculous. They should be mixing it up, dividing them up by a lottery into 2 different debates so everybody is in on the action. You make a great point.
Guys, it's going to be so awkward, isn't it? I mean, when there were 7 candidates up there, that was different.
Right.
Now we're down to 4. Pataki, Jindal, Graham, Jim Gilmore couldn't even make it.
No one's going to watch.
No one's going to watch her. I don't know what they do with each other. They don't benefit by attacking each other.
What they should be doing is taking everybody who's running, drawing lots, drawing straws, mixing them up, matching them up, and having 2 debates. We can handle.
They're letting the
debates.
polls run this election.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
And let me ask you this one thing. You know, wouldn't it be better if 2 things? If they just had 5 specific questions to really nail down what their policies were, and then ask everybody, then had whatever other discussions they want. They're not going to do that.
Not with that many debaters.
The other thing I want to ask you, in all honesty, do you think that Rick Perry's glasses hurt him? Because I find it hard to take him seriously with those glasses.
That's not what did it. And he doesn't think that's what did it.
We completely disagree on this.
You think it is?
Yes.
I
They're
don't
the
think so.
Rachel Maddow, I'm smarter than I was in 2012 glasses. He tried to rebrand himself as a more intellectual person.
You know what's sad?
And it looked weird.
He
It does look
actually
strange.
is smarter than he was in
Yes, no doubt about it.
2012.
When
He
we saw
spent
him
the
speak.
past 4 years preparing
I
to
literally
run
think
for
those
president.
glasses
I
hurt him.
feel bad for him.
Me
Yep.
too. Yeah.
But you can't put Humpty Dumpty back together, as they say.
apparently
Or the
not.
toothpaste back in the... Anyway, regarding VP Joe Biden as president, Michael says, I saw a clip of Joe Biden on with Stephen Colbert. If Biden is still in mourning for the loss of his son, what would happen if, God forbid, he was elected president and lost his wife while in office? That's not morbid or anything. I don't know how to tackle that.
Honestly, guys, I don't know why we would run that comment. I will not respond to that.
That could happen to any one of the
course it
candidates.
could.
And think about the ages of some of the top candidates. Hillary's 67, Trump is
It's
69,
not even-
Sanders is
it's not an age,
73.
It's a totally inappropriate
Anybody could lose
question.
anybody at any time. That's a whole ball of wrong. Anyway, you want
Let's
the
keep
next
going.
one?
Regarding Donald Trump, Scott says, Rick, I guess he means me. I agree about Trump. It seems as though he can't get to the issues and his campaign has become more and more like a junior high name-calling contest. I'm on disability and donated to Trump's campaign. At first I thought it was a good idea. Now I wish I hadn't. He just can't get past the name-calling hogwash. Well, I'm sorry that you lost some money there, but I'm glad you came around.
And I think Scott's idea is what a lot of people are seeing now, that
I
they were
think-
hoping he was going to get
yeah.
past the name calling into some policies, and he's just not
It
doing
is a very interesting comment. Now that we're seeing Carson come closer,
Carson-
I wonder if that's the future.
Carson should take a lesson from him, and he should take a lesson from Carson. If they did that, then we'd have a real competition.
might be
What
right.
lesson should Carson take from
Just
Trump?
be more bold and stop being so soft-spoken.
That's
Who he is,
though.
though. Yeah.
He
He's
is a
gonna,
soft-spoken man.
yeah, but
But I
he's
think
gonna
people
have
like
to
it.
show that he has some power. I
Well,
have not
so
seen
you're
that.
saying be more assertive, but
We'll
I think if he
see
changes
tomorrow.
too much, then it looks like he's scripted.
I was just going to
We'll
tomorrow.
see tomorrow.
Yeah, we will indeed. Anyway, remember, if you want to weigh in on any of the issues we talk about here in the show, be sure to go to Show the Box, newsmaxtv.com/comments. There's the box. Thank you. And let us know what you think. Also, Newsmax is hosting a post-debate special featuring Ed Berliner, J.D. Hayworth, Steve Malzberg, Rick Unger, and me tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time right here on Newsmax. Newsmax TV. Special guests Ben Carson, Mike Reagan will be joining the broadcast along with Dick Morris and John Zogby. Good stuff. Hey, Yay or Nay is next. Stay tuned. It's happy time, people. Welcome back to Daily Wrap. It's time for Yay or Nay. First up, how does this sound to you? Vice President Bill Clinton. Well, with everyone's focus on Mrs. Clinton's emails and likability ratings or lack thereof and whatnot, we haven't really spoken about who she might pick as her VP. Hillary says that while she isn't sure if Bill is legally able to run, according to our legal panel, it's not possible, since he wouldn't be able to take over the position if need be. He's already been president. There's amendments around that and whatnot, or constitutional ones anyway. She thinks he would be a great vice president. If Bill could run as VP, wouldn't a Clinton ticket be tremendous from an entertainment perspective alone? Unger.
It wouldn't be entertaining to anybody who had to work for the campaign, I'll tell you that.
Oh, you make a good point.
I'd want to be as far away from that campaign office as humanly possible.
Interesting. Let me ask you a question before you answer. Where is Bill Clinton? I haven't heard from him in months.
You will.
He's supposed to be the best asset for this campaign. It's in trouble, and they should be turning to him. I know you're saying he will, but boy, it's getting late early around here already.
He's going to swoop in and try to save the day. They say that he's guiding her through this. If so, he's not doing the greatest job. But I think, Rick, to your point that you wouldn't want to work there, I think he's still controlling a lot as is and probably causing some problems behind the scenes that we don't even know about.
No doubt.
Interesting.
You want to talk about problems. If he becomes the first husband, or whatever you want to call him, I foresee a major problem, because Bill Clinton cannot be in an area without causing some kind of personal problem to himself. He's the type of person who typically will go in and can achieve all these great things, but will eventually ruin his name somehow, some way. He's done that time after time.
But what he's done has always mainly been personal. I mean, I think
That's
that a
what I'm
lot
saying,
of people
personal.
love him, and I think that he's got a lot of great ideas. I watched a documentary this weekend about children's diets that he was in, and it was fascinating. I think he's got a lot to, he's a much better candidate than she is.
They love him, not because of his personal fiascos, and he does have many. He was a great president.
And a true centrist who made an adjustment after
Great,
he
that's
lost
right.
the House and
That's
said,
right.
okay, I'll work with you. Boy, those were the
Great
days.
president will get
Anyway,
people loving you.
that's true. With Donald Trump's massive success, the door is now open for some rich reality TV show guys to jump into the race for the White House. Take Dallas Mavericks owner and star of the hit reality show Shark Tank. His name is Mark Cuban. There he is, for example, who just recently hosted a rally for Mr. Trump in Dallas. Cuban says he could crush Trump should he decide to run. Trump, Cuban, 2016, yay or nay? Gilliam.
I don't particularly know anything much about Mark Cuban, except that he's got a bit of a mouth on him, and that would be just a disastrous combination of those two, I think.
Successful businessman.
Yeah, I like Mark
NBA
Cuban. I think he's honest and straightforward, but I don't know that I want him for president or vice president, just like I don't know that I want that for Trump
The
either.
Cuban vote he would lock up, clearly, Unger.
Would he have to put the Dallas Mavericks into a blind trust?
Yes, I think maybe he will.
How many Latins
This could
do you
be
think he would get
a
because he's
problem
got
for the NBA.
How many Latin votes would he get just because of his last name? Of people mistaking
Yeah,
that
think
he's
that he's
probably
Cuban.
You would think that about Ted Cruz, that he would get the liberal vote because
Yeah,
his brother's
nobody
Tom
likes
Cruise.
him.
Anyway, finally, Air India is planning to ground 125 of its flight attendants after they failed to reach an adequate BMI. Apparently, over 600 of the airline's flight attendants were given a 6-month probationary period to shape up or ship out. Wrong analogy there for a plane. And the crew getting grounded failed the test. Air India says this is all about health and not about appearances, but can an airline fire crew members for being overweight or out of shape, yay or nay? Heather Hansen, former flight attendant yourself.
They can. I mean, you know, if you can't do the tasks of your job, whether that's getting around the aisles, there's a lot to do with flying that they can actually say if you weigh too much, you can't do the job.
My suspicion is they certainly can in India. I question how well it would go down here.
It's actually been
Has it been
litigated, but
litigated?
it has to go within its certain BMI, your height, your age. All have to be taken into consideration, and that's changed over the years. But it is part of your job. If you can't do your job because you can't get
Are
through
there
the
any
aisles,
airlines that have that requirement?
They all
now?
do have
the
certain
American ones, they
requirements,
do.
yeah.
Okay.
And Qantas still has had a major crash.
I'd
bring that up.
rather not fly on a plane with heavy flight attendants than a plane that wasn't certified to fly overseas like American Airlines just did.
And plus, it uses more fuel. Our producer says, "Yeah, that's nice. You're off screen. You get to say these things."
You guys are doing these Trumpisms. I'd watch it if I were you.
What does BMI stand for, by the way?
Body Mass Index.
Is Hooters still an airline? That was an airline for a while.
What's your body mass index?
It's 0. It's like 1.
Oh,
1. Very good. That's all for tonight. On that
Mine's
cheerful
less than
note,
his.
on behalf of Rick Unger and the rest of our panel, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. The Steve Malzberg Show. That's nice.